You're here on CMajor before the show, and we're talking about chromatic tonight. What does chromatic mean for you? I think I need to clarify that. So a couple of times this week you may have heard our promos, and I just mentioned the word chromatic. What does chromatic mean for you? When I think of chromatic, I think of something like that. But what does that sound like to you? So we will be talking about that tonight. And I want you to just put on your listening ears, turn on your light bulbs, and put on your thinking caps, and just really have fun with me tonight because it's a fun topic for me. I hope it's as fun for you as it is for me. And the first thing I want to have you do is just imagine. Imagine that you are way back in the 1600s. When music was generally based on major and minor scales in many parts of the world, maybe not all parts of the world, and not so much on the chromatic scale. Now imagine, and fast forward to the second half of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th, you are now using chromatic notes. And because of that, you can no longer hear a stronger change of key. Key changes and any feeling of tonality has been weakened. So welcome again to tonight's podcast. And I also want to say a few more things a little bit later on in the podcast about our plans going forward, because I know that tonight is going to be a very technical discussion, just a little bit beyond chords and more just on sound and feeling and just using your imagination. So I hope you'll stay with us tonight. And I have lots to talk about. So thank you for being here. So the first thing I want to say is that, have you ever been asked to write something chromatic? Probably not, because this podcast has been mostly about listening and playing and just really understanding what the sound is first before you write anything down. But over at the CMajor radio show, we are definitely going to talk about how to write chromatic scales as well as chords. And there are many different ways to do it. So I have a lot of information in front of me. I know you can't see it, but just bear with me tonight. All you need to do is remember to make sure that if you are playing, that every single note can be heard. So it's all about going from one key to the very next key. And that's one example. But we've been talking about chords, so what would that sound like? I'll just give you one example. So this is my example of what it would sound like to go down chromatically by chords. Can you hear it? And then you can go back up again, and so forth. Okay, so my favorite thing to do is just to go fast when I'm playing chromatic chords or if I'm playing chromatic scales, and it just has kind of a dreamy effect. And so I also encourage you, just for homework, to challenge yourself to maybe Google that word chromatic, and I'll spell it for you because some of my students need to know that there is an H in chromatic, and it's CHROMATIC. Chromatic. That's how you say it, and that's how you spell it. So make sure the H is in there. It is not CROM. It's CHROMATIC. So if someone asks you to write it out, then let's say if you start on an A flat, for instance, okay, And if you need to know where A flat is, I would say look at your chord chart, because you can at least see an A flat chord, but just single out that note A flat. But what would be the very next key? We've talked a little bit about accidentals. I think accidentals are not accidents, and definitely over at the C major radio show we talked about accidentals. But A flat, if you wrote it out, you can call that next key A natural, or you could call it a B double flat, right? You could use a key signature, or you could not use a key signature. It's up to you how you want to write it out. Okay, so I will be posting some homework a little bit later over at C Major's classroom, so hope you will see me over there. And let me just take out one of my resources here. So just to clarify, when I say chromatic chords, I mean just figuring out a way to play your chords going down by half steps if you can. But also in music, especially in classical music, a chromatic chord is considered a chord including at least one note which does not belong to the diatonic scale of the key. So that's very technical language. That's what I mean about getting technical tonight. But I will repeat some of this information over at the C Major radio show, and I'm so excited. I'm going to be saying C Major radio show a lot tonight because I'm excited about the things that we're doing, and I have some big announcements to make on tonight's podcast. So thank you so much for being here. And in a minor key, the notes of both the harmonic and the melodic forms of the scale are diatonic. Chromatic chords may be used in the process of modulation, or they may be used without any hint of modulation, simply for their expressive effect. Okay, so I like that last part. And that's why I love this book so much. This author is just so great because he really nails it. He really hits everything on the head, so to speak. And so I think when I think of chromatic, I think of the expression that goes along with it. And I would say that's certainly how I like to use it. So when I want to impress someone, I'll play something chromatic. But music in a major key may use chords that are borrowed from the minor key. We talked about that a lot in my college days in music theory, and with the same key note. So a piece in C major may borrow chords from C minor. The chords most commonly borrowed in this way are the diminished chord on 2, the minor chord on 4, and the major chord on the flatted 6, or you can put a flat sign in front of that. So, for instance, in C major, you may borrow chords that sound like this. Okay. And then there's an example here. I'm not going to play the left hand. I'll just play the right hand so you can hear some of the changes. But this is from the opening of one of Schumann's songs, and it goes like this. Okay, and it's a written example as well. It's an illustration, but it just shows you the flat sign before a chord that indicates that there is a change. And so in this particular example, we have a diminished chord. And if you know the term supertonic, you could use that word as well. So they just added a minor seventh, and then you can see that illustration here. Again, if you have any questions about the resources that we use, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm always happy to share what we're doing over here, and I don't have any problem with it. And I'm open for the discussion. So I love talking about music theory with my students, and it's something that I'm very enthusiastic about. I won't use the word passionate, because I think if you're passionate, about music theory, you'll just be writing and composing all the time. But speaking of composers, I did have the benefit of knowing a composer up close who was published and well known. And so I just became a huge fan of his writing because there are lots of accidentals in the way that he writes. And I think he talked a lot about 20th century harmony and so forth. So I actually wanted to just acknowledge that I learned a lot from him and the way that he writes. And it's just so curious, because if you put the left hand with that little passage, you have C sharp, but it's a tied note, and then it goes down to B and it goes down to A. And I was just wondering, what that would have sounded like if he had just moved in a chromatic fashion. But he's skipping around anyway in the harmony. So your challenge this week also is just to figure out how you can play some chromatic chords. You can go in order just like I did before. You can go in order that way, or you can start skipping around and see if you can come up with, some sort of melody. Think about your spacing. We haven't really talked about intervals that much, but we have talked about inversions. So I think it's possible just to create your own sound. I put a quote yesterday on the Spreaker post that I posted yesterday, just announcing what we would talk about today. And I think I quoted someone who was famous, and they were just basically saying there are no wrong notes. And so don't be afraid of wrong notes. There are lots of rules when it comes to music theory and composition, but don't be afraid of finding your own sound. If you like the chromatic sound, then just play around with that sound and see what you can come up with on your own. Who knows what you'll stumble up on, and just have fun with it. So thank you so much. I just wanted to sit with you for a little bit, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my location. So you're going to hear some movement. So just bear with me for a moment because I need to get to a different area so I can do my shout outs, because that's normally what I do in the opening, and then I start talking about chords, but we switched it up a little bit today, and with good reason. So as I gather my things, I'm going to be moving to the next location. And I hope you had a good week. I hope that the weather is good wherever you are. We had up and down weather. I would describe it as up and down weather here in the greater New York City area. And at one point, we weren't sure if it was going to be cold, or if it was going to be warm, or if it was going to be something else. And so it was a little hard to dress this week. It was a little hard to know how we should dress in the morning versus how we might be dressing later on in the afternoon. So anyway, I hope wherever you are, the weather is great and that it holds up at least until the springtime. So good luck with the weather as we prepare for spring. So here I am in my other location. I'm going to put my resources aside here for a moment. And now I'm going to go over to the area where I'd like to do my shout outs. And the first shout out I have this evening is to some friends who are in the greater New York City area. And they are not necessarily musician friends, let's say it like that. But I know from talking with some of them, they are definitely into music. But they need your help. And so I promised that I would use my social media and the connections that I have to do some shouting out for them. Okay, so just bear with me for a moment. It's for my friends at a company called HMS Host. So if you are a musician or you know of anyone who is in the greater New York City area and they need work, then I would just invite you to get in touch with this company. Online, you can find them at hmshost.com/careers, or you could use the hashtag HMSHost to find them online. And if you need any further information about that, let me know, because I can also give you the information to use to get in touch with them via text. But if you think you need work and you are interested in the hosting business, let's say it that way. So just to give you an example, I talk all the time on this podcast about coffee culture, and they have some openings for barista and so forth, and they are having a hiring party. So you can actually receive a free, get this, write this down, a free Starbucks coffee just for applying. So definitely jump on that. Let all of your friends know. And I wish you the best. I mean, everyone could use work nowadays. If you're a musician and you're in between gigs, or you are kind of taking a break from music and you have plans to come back and you need something to fill your time and to help you out with whatever you need help with, then I recommend getting in touch with this hiring initiative. So good luck. The next shout out I want to give is to my friends. They're having a show tonight. Now I'm very excited for them because these are friends that I've known for a very long time. And I had kind of a chuckle earlier this morning. I was just thinking about how long they have been around making the music that they've been making. And how would you categorize that music today? So imagine you're a hip hop artist, you're an R&B and funk band, and you've been playing hits that have been hits for quite a while. How would you categorize that? And at what point did those same hits become vintage, so to speak? At some point, at what point? At some point they will, if they are hits, but at what point does that happen? Where is the pivotal point for the music making? But anyway, they're still gigging, they're still going strong, and I just want to say that I wish you the best as you go forward and keep going with your music making. And that's what I mean when I say get out and make some music and make the best music you can make. And if you are in the greater New York City area, there's always something going on. And so I will be checking out one of these groups tonight, and then I'll be able to tell you all about it on next week's show. So shout out to my friends who are making music tonight. It should be fun, and if I have a chance to, what I will do is just maybe even do a little bit of recording and put that as a promo for next week's episode. So we'll see what happens. If the vibe is right, I'll do it. Now, I want to give a shout out to all of my students who are preparing for recital. Recital information is just starting to come out. Parents are starting to ask about recitals, and everybody's getting ready with their pieces. And so I think this year I'm probably going to have a lot of students interested in Star Wars again, maybe some students interested in playing patriotic pieces, and others interested in playing Beethoven. Ode to Joy is always a recital favorite, and maybe Star Wars. We'll see what happens. So I think those may be the top right now. So Star Wars, Harry Potter, patriotic songs, and Beethoven, I think would be my top four. But shout out to all of my students that are even thinking about doing recital. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and I'm looking forward to helping you prepare for that and working with your parents and any of my adult students that want to participate. I'm looking forward to helping you work on something that you're going to feel strong enough to play in front of others. So shout out to all my students. Okay, and then, we started talking about polls very early on. So if you look in the description of C Major Before the Show, you will see that we mentioned poll. And it's because it's something I'm very excited about, the social media polls that are available online are just, to me, so much fun and just so insightful. And so we hope to do more of that. I think as spring really starts to become spring, and as we go into the summer months, we will start to do more and more of the polling, and then also hopefully we will have more interaction, live interaction on the podcast. So that's my aim for upcoming episodes, is to include the poll. So look out for that. We have signed up with Poll Everywhere, and we're very excited about the developments there. So shout out to Poll Everywhere. Now, a big shout out to Spreaker and Blog Talk Radio. And I've said some things about them in the past, and all of it's meant to be in good nature and just positive speech about the platforms that they provide, and we would not be able to do what we do without them. So big shout out to Spreaker, big shout out to Blog Talk Radio. I think your platforms are great, and I'm just very excited that I'm able to create and distribute this podcast and the other podcasts. So shout out to you guys. I think you are fantastic. I could name names. In the past, I've named names, but I have at least 4 names in mind when I think about Spreaker and I think about Blog Talk Radio. So I really appreciate that you guys are working with us so we can be the best that we can be here on the podcast. And I think I will be taking a break soon from our chords series. But what I want to do is take a look, because this is going to be important for the C Major radio show as well. But let's see how we're doing online. So I have my computer out. I'm typing in, and you can do this too. Just go to Spreaker.com and go to C Major Before the Show. So if you go to C Major Before the Show, you'll see a list of all of the most recent episodes and our show description. So if you've not read our show description, C Major Before the Show, listen as C Major describes what's coming up on the C Major radio show. Also tune in for shout-outs, weekly social media polls, piano instruction, and encouragement. C Major Before the Show aims for a fun-filled vibe to keep you motivated about your music making. We do try to do that. So the list goes from Happy Piano Day, which is what we mentioned yesterday as a promo, and then down to Fun-Filled Flats, finding G flat, and more. But if I click on more, it's going to take me to the others. Now, what we were doing before is we were listing the number of our episodes. We are no longer doing that. I think that Apple Music and TuneCore and the way that they like to list the podcast does not rely on an episode number. And so we had to start being a little bit more descriptive. So I know it was somewhere around episode 80 that we started talking about chords. I think it was in mid-January. So I'm thinking it was around January 19th, but let me just count here. 1, 2, 3. Let's see. 1, 2. Yes, I'm counting. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so today actually may be episode 11. I'm going to double check that. So if this is episode 11 that we've had between 30 and 70 plus minutes of talking about chords, then that was a full show that was dedicated to a lesson about chords. And so next week could be the 12th week that we've devoted any real length of time to talking about chords. And if that's the case, then we're going to label that the 12 weeks of our Piano for Parents series, talking about chords, mentioning wellness, sprinkling in some mentions about music making and wellness. And let me just say this too. Let me clarify the wellness bit. So I told you about the research. I told you about some of the definitions for music making and wellness that are out there. But we really just want you to feel as well as you can. And we're hoping that music will be a big part of that. I'm excited because if you have any type of app that can help you measure your wellness, then you can just use that app. And so if you're into health at all, if you're into drinking the green drink, for instance, and if you are into anything that really is intended to help you feel well and keep well, then maybe music can be a part of that too. So just keep us posted. Let us know how that's working for you. And just share the ways that you're measuring that. That's really what it is that we're trying to do here, is just make music part of your day, make music part of your life, make music part of your week, and just knowing what the benefit is for you. So applause if you are finding that music making and wellness is working for you. Okay, so now I'm ready for the big announcement about the CMajor radio show. And the announcement is that we have decided to go ahead and start the process of migrating the show over here to Spreaker. So we're moving away from Blog Talk Radio. It's been a while since I've signed up for Blog Talk Radio, and finally I was able to put together something that I thought would stick, and it's based on real information that I gather on a daily basis from talking with students, talking with parents, talking with lessons professionals, and networking. And so to be able to put together something like this and sustain it has been very exciting and I would say rewarding too. So I'm very excited about this move. I'm really hoping that it's the right thing. So I'm working now with the administrators over this platform to see if this is the right move, if this is the best move, if we're moving in the right way, and how to continue that podcast over here on this platform. So I'm excited to have CMajor Before the Show and the CMajor Radio Show back to back using this platform. And then if for some reason it seems that we grow in a way that we need to be back over at BTR, then we will be back over there. But we shouldn't miss a beat. So definitely give us your feedback and let us know how you are enjoying the podcast over here. And I'm just excited. I'm very excited about the CMajor Radio Show move. And so having said all of that, we're going to try something a little bit different because spring is approaching. Like I said, technically it's spring already, but spring weather and spring activities are becoming more and more as the weather becomes a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more springy, so to speak. And so CMajor is going to want to go out and either do open mics and hear some of her friends performing and things like that. So that may take place on a Saturday evening, which means that I probably should be away doing that. And I may not be able to do 2 podcasts live back to back on a Saturday evening because of that. So we're going to see what it feels like to split the podcast to a Saturday evening and then a Sunday afternoon. I learned from just reading about some of the world's greatest pianists how they treated Sunday afternoons, that they found that Sunday afternoons worked really, really well for making themselves available to be heard by others. And so we're hoping that will work for us too, because I think of Sunday afternoon as a family afternoon, and we are trying to be very family friendly over here, and in terms of having you work to bring together your family through music making. So I'm excited about that. So having said all of that, the CMajor radio show will probably, most likely, air tomorrow afternoon and not tonight. So Saturday night for the CMajor radio show is shifting to Sunday afternoon, just to say it another way. But I'm very excited about that. And then we'll move it back as needed. So the other thing I want to say is that see us over at CMajor's Classroom. So we changed that too. We changed the address so that you can find it at CMajorporter.com. So go there because we have homework assignments over there, and we also have some other announcements as well. Don't be afraid to click on some of the links that you see. If you need to find particular sheet music, for instance, or resources, let us know. We can help you with that. And I would like to give a shout out to Do Re Mi World. Let's give a shout out to them because they have helped me to link some of my social media. So I have profiles that are up, and they've been very, very helpful in helping me to link some of that. So shout out to them. That's so important. I mean, in the age of, I get daily emails about taking this course and computer topics, and taking that course, about 10 different courses that I've been asked to consider taking. And maybe I'll get to that. I'm not a computer professional. At one point I had an opportunity to be one, but I did not grab hold of that opportunity. And computers has been something I've been very, very interested about. So who knows? I may decide to do that. I may be inspired to do that. I have friends that they listen to podcasts on a daily basis about cloud and everything else. And so who knows? I may decide to jump into that more or less as a hobby and to help myself have a little better knowledge about the things that go on with programming on computers and so forth. And that's reminding me, I have another shout out as well to someone that I talked with today who has recently received her degree in professional audio and engineering and has become proficient at Pro Tools and is deepening her knowledge of understanding how to work a soundboard and all of these things. So shout out to her. I think that's great. We had a very in-depth conversation about microphones and miking and things of that nature. And so I'm looking forward to talking with her further, just to kind of pick her brain a little bit, so to speak. But it's fun to be able to have those conversations. So somebody who's just excited as I am about these audio engineering topics and talking about the new cables that are coming out, and I won't start naming the cable makers, but everything that is gold, let's say it that way, is highly regarded in the audio engineering field. And so I'm just really excited about being able to have those types of conversations. Now, next week, tune in for some special announcements, because again, I'm going to recount just to see where we are with this 12-week series, and to see if we're either in the 11th week or the 12th week. I believe this is our 11th week, and we're topping it off with Chromatic Chords. And then next week, listen for the special announcements, because I want to make that 12th week really special. Because what's going to happen, and I've decided, is that we're going to just keep repeating the 12-week course. Now, it's not going to be the exact same information in every single episode the way we've done it previously, because different things are happening every week. So I will have new information. I'll do updates. And so I will have something new to say, because resources are constantly coming out. In fact, I'm seeing online a lot that a lot of social media sites and websites and online educators are now starting to focus a little bit more on music theory. And it's just a real exciting time, because if you can jump into that and really start to think, what can you do to have those type of discussions? So one resource that I've stumbled upon is a chord dictionary for piano. Now, I don't know how new it is, but it's definitely new to me. And so if it's new to me, then I'll make it new to you, and we'll just see what we can do with it. Now, I'm excited about it because they give you a little bit more information about how to write progressions and how to use different chords and how to play these chords in both hands. Because remember, as you recall, I had this other chart where it was just chords for the left hand in different inversions, and they wanted you to use the left hand for accompanying. But in this particular book, they have chord inversions for both. Now, before I end today's podcast, let me do as I promised, and let's go over to Facebook. So if you've seen our presence on Facebook, then you know that we are listed as a page that I manage. Which is titled after this podcast, CMajor Before the Show. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to give a shout out to okay, so let me just pause the music for a moment, because sometimes when you start opening all these windows, there's a glitch. Okay, so here I'm on Facebook. Now, if you happen to be one of my Facebook friends, shout out to you. And I see that I have 2 notifications for CMajor Before the Show. So let me just click on that real quick. So it's opening up. And it's just telling me about promoting some of the posts that I've posted. But now I just want to go to the page. And you can go to this page too. Just go to facebook.com/CMajor's Classroom. That's how it's listed, but the title of the page is CMajor Before the Show. So working backwards, basically CMajor describes what's coming up on the CMajor radio show, and that's true. And so our format, I consider it all new because it's constantly being updated. But yesterday was Happy Piano Day, so tune into that if you can. Also, let me say a little bit about the ads too. So if you're starting to hear some of our ads rolling at the beginning and the end, just know that I will start to, make it possible for you to hear more ads and breaking up the broadcast. So I'm going to be working on that too, and just stick with us because I think that's just the times that we live in, that people don't mind interruptions. So a little ad interruption is not going to be too distracting, but just keep on listening and hopefully you'll pick up some things that you want to take away from the podcast. So you'll just see Happy Piano Day, and then you page down, you'll see Piano Day, which is an actual link that I posted from SoundCloud. So look at that. And then I said we will mention this on the podcast, which we did. So we mentioned the podcast hiring party. So if you have a chance, go there and see that for yourself. We will talk about this on the next episode. And then all I wanted to talk about was that there are there are just so many social media posts now about becoming a music teacher and using that as a possibility for yourself if you're a musician that's on break and you need something else to do and you want something else to do, then I would definitely say tap into that. Chromatic Chords, taking it step by half step. So hopefully it felt like a chromatic weekend. If you listened to the podcast earlier, go back and re-listen. It may take you a few times to really get what you want to get from the podcast, but don't be afraid to do that. Now, I think I mentioned this last time that I was able to attend a performance, and it was a very fun weekend of music and music making, and I was just really, really glad to see some of my musician friends. And so after that, it just says stay tuned for some exciting promos this week. So we try to make the promos as exciting as possible. And so hopefully you get something out of what we post during the week. Okay, so that's basically it. I want to make sure I go over there with you. So tune in next week. I'm going to make a special announcement. Again, it could be that I'm going to talk about some of the popular chords and give you some actual chord progressions to use. I may have given you a little bit before in the past. I may have just dabbled in that, but I'm going to give you even more. I'm going to give you even more. And it will involve many of the chords that you've learned so far on this podcast. I won't say all of the chords, but many of the chords that you've learned so far on this podcast. So definitely tune in for that. Definitely tune in for any special announcements. And we're just going to talk about how we're going to kick off the next 12 weeks as well. So what I aim to do is just have like a week break and then go into the next 12 weeks. So it's just basically giving you a chance to go away, do your takeaways. It also gives me a chance to see, do I want to post anything over on our main site and have you access those resources, add anything to the resources for you to download, things of that nature. If I want to offer any handouts, for instance, anything that you can take away or even in some cases throw away or keep. So think of the information as being keeper information or just takeaways or something that you may just look at and glance at and go, okay, I can get rid of this. And then you can always just refresh that information a little bit later. That's how we want to keep the flow going here. So thank you again for tuning in to CMajor Before the Show. It's been a great pleasure to be with you. Have a terrific evening, and I'm going to get ready now to go see some of my musician friends making the best music they can make. And I hope that you will have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time right here on CMajor Before the Show.